This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. Thanks for tuning with us here again at WESN. In a statement carried in the newspapers just a couple of weeks ago, the Minister of Social Development and Family Services, Donna Cox, presented instruments of appointment to 38 people. They are called members of the Central and Local Public Assistance Boards. The presentation took place at the ministry's headquarters in Port of Spain on St. Vincent Street. The statement from the ministry said, among other things, the appointees are required to attend local board and assessment meetings for the purpose of scrutinizing applications for senior citizens' pension, public assistance and disability assistance grants, and burial assistance grants, and for making decisions on applications on merits according to the acts, the policies, the regulations and guidelines that govern these things. As Elizabeth Villarreal is Deputy Director in the department that deals with these things at the ministry, she's agreed to talk with us on this edition of the program. Good to have you, ma'am.
Good morning.
All right, so let's start to talk about what is the difference between the Central Assistance Board and the Local Assistance Board, and how many? So there's one central board, and then there are several local assistance boards. Is it correct that the local boards sort of aligned with the local government agencies in the country, or no?
No. The local board is not aligned to the local government agencies. Throughout Trinidad and Tobago, we have 11 public assistance boards located throughout the country. So each district has a board which is responsible for the decision making with respect to grants, which persons would apply for within their region. So our local boards comprise of, let's start from the west, the St. George West Local Board, which is located at the corner of Duke and Richmond Streets. We have the St. George Central Local Board, which is located at Plaza Aranjuez. We have the St. George East Local Board, which is located on the Eastern Main Road in Tunapuna. We have the St. Andrew St. David Local Board, which is located in Sangre Grande. We have the Nariva Mayaro Local Board in Rio Claro. We have the Victoria East Local Board in Princestown. We have the Victoria West Local Board in Sangre Grande. We have the Caroni Local Board in Chaguanas. We have the St. Patrick East Local Board, which is in Separia, and the St. Patrick West Local Board in Point Fortin. We also have a local board in Tobago. So citizens, depending on where they reside and seeking one of our grants, will need to visit one of the local boards in their area.
Yeah, this is a question that I've had for somebody for the longest while, and because I'm confused, I tend to get confused sometimes. So you talked about St. Patrick East, and I've seen the breakdown in the country in various ministries like that still. And my understanding, I thought that when we moved from counties to regional organizations, so to speak, that the county system would have gone out of existence. But in education and health and everything else, those things remain. That's because it's easier to deal with the country like that in Caroni East, Caroni Central, Caroni West, St. George East, St. George West, as it used to be.
And those locations are also convenient for clients to reach too, so it's easier for us to maintain those regions.
So administratively, it's easier to work like that?
Administratively, yeah. As the need arises, we may see the establishment of other local boards, because our clientele is growing. More persons are accessing our grants, so we may see the establishment of other local boards. It is the intention of the government to establish another office in Arima, so that persons in the Arima area may be better serviced, as opposed to having to come to Tunapuna for service, right? So in our more heavily populated regions, in time we may see the establishment of other local boards.
So those things are under consideration as we speak?
As we speak.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the difference between what the central boards do and what the local boards do.
All right. So all all applications for our grants are approved by a local board. Decisions are taken at the local board. We have local board meetings once per month where members would meet and decide on cases, applications, and decisions are taken on whether to continue assistance for persons, right? Sometimes someone may, an application may be rejected at the local board level, and someone may be aggrieved by the decision. They may not agree with that decision, and there is an opportunity for that person to appeal the decision. It is appealed at the central board's level. So the central board there oversees the activities of the local board. The central board also is responsible for making rules as well, you know, so from time to time, so that the local board can, you know, better operate.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. Another question, given what I've seen in the public space over a period of time, like I was saying, when I was growing up, it was known as the old age pension. My grandmother and people like that in the village, I used to go and help people when they get, at that time, I think it went up from $11 to $14 at a point, and people were celebrating. that tell you, that dates me, so to speak. And so I followed it for a long time in that period and after that. And then when the point came where there was a discussion that, well, you know, people felt that you had a right to it once you got to the age. And then when, I think it was under one of the administrations of the late Prime Minister Manning, the idea of the pension sort of got de-emphasized, and the issue of the grant sort of came into the picture. And there were a lot of discussions about that, and people were worried that, well, you know, people felt they had a right to it. And if you say the grant, then you could or could not qualify for it. You think those things have been dealt with sufficiently, in your view?
Well, it's still called the senior citizen pension. However, you still have to qualify for it. It's not automatic. Not because you have attained the age of 65,
yeah,
you will automatically qualify for the senior citizen's pension. You still have other criteria to satisfy. There's an income criteria and also a residency criteria. Okay? If your income exceeds $5,500 per month, you will not qualify for the senior citizen pension. There are different bands, all right? Based on your income, you can qualify for different bands. So if, for instance, if your income is between $0 and $2,500 per month, you will qualify for the maximum of $3,500. Between $2,501 to $3,500, you'll qualify for $2,500. Between $3,501 to $4,500, you'll qualify for $1,500. And $4,500
To 5,000.
to $5,500, you'll qualify for $500. So it's not to say that you cannot have an income, but based on your income, you will qualify for the grant.
Yeah. So the ceiling there is 5,500.
500, yes.
If you're getting that.
Anything over that, you don't qualify.
To what extent there's any discussion as to whether that is, you know, that sort of satisfactory to people, what 5,500 will do a month, and a lot of people will say, well, that's not enough to take me through. In the same way that I've heard discussions about, well, national insurance is another thing. I've heard a man say, well, that works out to $30 a day, and nobody can live on that. But so people who get their national insurance, because that was a contributory, it is a contributory program, can still qualify for.
Yes, they will qualify
they do?
for $2,500. If national insurance of $3,000 is your only source of income, you can still apply for and qualify for $2,500. You still have to meet the other criteria of age and residency, though.
Yeah. So, and that takes you up to the 5,500. So the 5,500 is sort of like the global figure out there in people's minds as to, so you can't get more than that from the state.
No.
And if you're getting that as your senior citizens grant, you can't get public assistance, you can't get disability assistance.
You cannot receive a pension for yourself and disability assistance for yourself or public assistance for yourself. You cannot get 2 grants for yourself. However, an adult man who has a dependent spouse who may not be as yet entitled to pension, and if that senior citizen pensioner, the male or the husband or the one who has responsibility for the spouse, is disabled from earning, they can apply for public assistance on behalf of their dependent wife, their dependent children under the age of 18, right? At that point, we would employ a means test, and if you qualify, you can receive another grant, however, on behalf of other dependents, not on behalf of yourself.
Not yourself. So
no.
Another person in the household, you can apply for them, and it could be.
Yes.
It could be approved.
Yes, once you satisfy the means test.
So who gets the public assistance alone?
Okay, public assistance. Several persons can qualify for public assistance. An adult, single adult, can qualify for public assistance on behalf of themselves if they are medically disabled from earning. There must be evidence of your disability, which is obtained via a prescribed medical report, which we issue to you to have completed at a government institution. It must be from a government institution. So an adult single person who's medically disabled from earning can apply once it is that you're in a household that satisfies the means test. Public assistance would be granted for you. Someone can apply for public assistance on behalf of their dependent children whose father may have died or may have abandoned them, abandoned the children, abandoned his responsibilities, or is incarcerated. You know, you can apply for public assistance on behalf of those children.
I wanted to ask about, I was telling you before we went on the air that I had cause to be in the building on Stevenson Street where some of this activity takes place. And one of the officials had taken me up in a room. I was trying to provide some assistance for someone I knew at the time who was needy. And we went up in this room, and a huge space that was just full of clothes and shoes. And my sense was that these things are donated. So the question that I have is, to what extent members of the public do that in different ways, that they make contributions to neediness and help, to what extent that helps in what you all do. There are people who are homeless, who don't have the means to get clothes and them kind of things, and people make those contributions.
Right, so at the Social Welfare Division, we don't usually receive donations from members of the public as such, or any agencies. However, it is not uncommon that at some local offices, we would collect items, sometimes from staff, sometimes we collect money and buy some groceries so that we can give to a needy client who may appear, but it's not, that is something that the staff does for themselves, right? So we don't really have readily available clothing items or food items. If there is a need and an emergency, what we can do is we can assess this person for an emergency food support, and we would give them a temporary food card if they satisfy the means test. So that is how we would attend to urgent need for food, all right, by assessing the client and issuing a temporary food card.
Do you know what is the sort of outer limit on the availability of food cards? Like, you know, how if we add up all the food cards that are in your bank at any time, what's the value of that, you know?
I wouldn't be able to give you an exact figure.
Yeah, but it's hundreds of thousands of dollars, one imagines.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's thousands. We have thousands of recipients on the permanent food card as we speak.
And food card recipients may also be recipients of any one of these categories of things here, public assistance or disability assistance.
Yes, but they have to satisfy a means test to continue getting the food support.
And can you talk a little bit about what the means test, or what is required to be satisfied?
Okay, so it's a calculation that is computed based on the number of persons in the household and based on the poverty line that we work with right now, food poverty line that we work with right now.
Yeah, and so there are people who would get a food card, and it's always temporary, right? You can't be a permanent, forever recipient.
It can't be forever. Food support is supposed to be a short-term measure, right? Food support is reviewed, all right? But in instances when there is an emergency, we can issue a temporary food card. There may be, due to some circumstance or some shock that may happen, a family may not be able to buy food today, this week, right? However, next month their situation may change, right? So when you are facing that immediate need, we can issue a temporary food card. There are those who apply for a longer food support for a longer period, and it's extended for that and reviewed. But it is not meant to be a forever grant.
Yeah. And there's some cases in which some things happen. You have bad weather, or as the case may be, or you know, people.
Exactly. So temporary food cards are issued when we experience national shocks, hurricanes and floods, and where persons would have experienced loss, unexpected loss. Temporary food cards are issued.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about these appointments. So 38 people have been appointed recently. What's the full complement of people who manage and operate and effectuate this system, you think?
Okay, so the local board members, we have 5 local board members at the local board level, okay? However, we have regular staff at the local boards, who are the ones who are responsible for going out there and investigating applications, writing their reports, and making recommendations to the local board. The local board will deliberate on on the applications and make a decision.
Yeah. So these 38 people are simply members of these boards who would sort of supervise the work of the people, of the public servants and employees who actually do the thing, right?
No, they will not supervise the staff. They would deliberate on the cases, not supervise the staff.
Right.
The staff are public servants,
right. Okay.
But the local boards are politically appointed.
Right. How often do these boards meet? How are they required?
Once per month.
Every month?
Yes.
Yeah.
Once per month for a local board meeting. However, we have what we call a disability assessment meeting at the local boards, where persons who apply for the disability assistance grant, they attend a meeting held by members of the local board, and their grant is assessed, their application is assessed.
What are some of the stresses that you find from your own experience as a public servant, and maybe your interactions with people who've been on the boards in this kind of a public assistance program? Generally, let's call it public assistance, whether it's the grants or the disability or the burial assistance. What are some of the stresses in it? You find that it's a hard road to hoe in terms of having the available resources spread across the needs and the applications?
Well, you know, it's always difficult when we hear that persons applied for grants and waiting approval for a long period. However, our major stress, as you would call it, is our shortages
Of funds,
of staff.
staff.
Yeah, not necessarily funds, but the shortages of staff. We really need a lot more persons out there doing this work.
And the shortage of staff doesn't have much to do with the availability of the hands and legs. It's what the system can carry, how many people can be employed. Is that it?
Well, I gather, because in reality, we have a lot more persons accessing our grants now. We have, COVID has shown us that persons can become vulnerable very easily.
In the twinkling of an eye.
In the twinkling of an eye. We've seen a lot of persons who have not recovered as yet, who have not gotten a job as yet. And those persons are accessing our grants, may it be food support or other grants, right? And with the increase in persons accessing the grants, the demands on the staff has become more, you know, so we really need to look at that, and we need to get more persons in the field. We're also faced with an aging public. We have a lot more persons.
Aging society.
An aging society.
People are living longer.
People are living longer, and people are applying for our grants.
In larger
More,
numbers.
in larger numbers. Persons who traditionally never applied for senior citizen pension, we're observing that they are now applying for the pension. So the demand on the staff is a lot more.
Yeah. And somebody can't be in possession of a pension from where they worked and they got to the retirement age and still make a request or make requests for the senior citizens grant.
Yes, you can.
Yeah. If what you're earning is less than this 5.5.
Correct. So if you're getting 3,000 national insurance and 1,000 from your former employer, you can still apply for senior citizen pension, and based on what your income is, you will qualify for a pension.
Do you get a sense, I mean, from your experience in doing this for however long, and working with people at different levels on margins, as to what is a viable income for somebody in retirement? Why, you know, somebody basically they don't. Well, when you get to retirement, unless you were, you know, in a very fabulous job where you're getting $10,000 a month and so on as your pension, people's standard of living tends to fall once they get retired and so on.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't want to guess that, because as we age, you know, our needs increase and our incomes become fixed. So I would not want to guess as to how much should be an adequate amount of pension. But in making those decisions, I guess the decision makers also have to consider how many persons we have on the grant as well. And we have to consider if we can sustain it, can sustain the grant if the grant is higher, you know, so.
Are these discussions that take place from time to time, intermittently, in your department?
Not in my sphere, but I'm sure that it takes place at another level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because this is a major issue, the whole business about public assistance. And it's taken, and it continues to take a larger slice of you know, people's attention and people's consideration to keep addressing this. What does it tell you about, well, the social state in the country? The number of people, let's say the percentage of the society that keeps lining up or signing up for some kind of public assistance.
What I can tell you is, based on the figures we have when we look at the number of persons who are applying for the grants, it is increasing. we're seeing it increasing. So you know that there are a lot more persons out there who are in vulnerable states.
Yeah. Let's go back to what you said about, post-COVID, that a lot of people have not recovered. Socially and economically.
Yeah, because we have a lot of persons who, since COVID, would have applied for food support, and they continue to depend on the food support grant because they have not been able to return to work due to several factors, including their former place of employment may have folded or anything like that. Yeah.
And there's a good bit of that.
There is.
Yeah. I'm interested in the point you make about the people, or at least the profile of people who maybe a decade or so ago you would not have expected to be seen coming to make applications, and so a lot of that is changing. Some people, we have to swallow our pride and we get to that point. To an extent, that is something you deal with on a regular basis. You see how people, I'm trying to get at, you see how people maybe take themselves down a bit to get accustomed to having to go, as some people say, cap in hand.
Well, a lot of persons are applying for the grant. Sometimes it takes a lot for some people to actually come and apply for the grant. But, you know, we treat everyone equally. When you come in, we treat you equally. We assess you based on what is required, and we don't judge you because of how you look, where you come from, or anything like that. There are certain criteria which you need to satisfy to qualify for our grant, and that is what we use.
But you know, some of the officers do make a determination based on where the person might be living, sometimes in what community they come from. Do you get a sense of with the household where they live, if people look prosperous otherwise, and to what extent those things come into play in terms of making a determination as to whether this person qualifies, this person is a genuine.
So the officers don't make a decision on if to grant or not to grant. The local board takes that decision. Okay, the officers go out there, do their investigation, write a report. Their report is vetted by their senior, right? And then after that, it is vetted by the supervisor, the local board. So it is not based on an officer cannot write in their report that this person should not be granted a particular grant because they live in a 3-story house with a swimming pool and whatever. That is not the criteria. Yeah, that is not the criteria for receiving the grant. So even, well, it is not my experience that officers do that in their report. But even if an officer should write that in their report, that will hold no weight.
Yeah. So let's talk about the process of sort of scrutinizing and vetting a report that comes in. What do you look for?
We look to see that you satisfy the criteria: age, income, and residency. If it is that you satisfy those criteria, you would be given the grant. If it is in doing so, flags are raised, we would investigate further to see whether it is you're really qualifying for the grant, or whether it is by some reason you have made yourself appear to be qualifying for the grant.
And that happens?
It happens.
And how does the process sort of pick that out and want to interrogate it some more?
All right, so we have very good investigating officers, and we have excellent supervising officers as well, who may be able to read through evidence that is provided to pick, to sift information, all right? And we would interrogate those findings, right? In the case where a decision cannot be taken, those cases are discussed at the local board meetings based on the information provided, based on the evidence before the local board. A decision will be taken either to approve or reject the case. If the case is rejected and the client feels that they're not satisfied, thinks they're not satisfied with the decision of the local board, they can appeal to the central board. An investigator will be appointed, the client will be interviewed, the discussions of the local board would be scrutinized, it would be presented at the central board meeting, and a decision will be taken.
All right, so that's the primary reason for the central board. That's sort of like the court of appeal when it comes to things.
And if the central board upholds that decision, the client also have the right to appeal to the minister.
Okay.
Final.
And that happens?
It does. It does.
Because some people would be insistent
Yes.
on making sure that they go the extra mile,
Go
they
the
go the
distance.
distance.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Elizabeth Virrell, thank you very much for talking with us on this. The sense of neediness in Trinidad and Tobago. This has been 10 Questions in this edition. Thank you for watching. I'm Andy Johnson. We'll see you next time.